Paul, I'm not hearing anything.
No, me neither.
Let's find out what's going on here.
Now we can.
Oh, I know why I did it. I know why. This is the joy of. All right. We will do this again. This is the joy of doing things live. Hello, thank you for joining us. And today we have with us Clare Lopez, and we're going to be getting into that. And we have Eric joining us. Thank you. And this is, I get real excited when I have Clare Lopez because I'll tell you, we always learn something that you sit there and wish you had learned before. And it never ceases to amaze me. But as this is a Christian show, I always want to start with a reading from God's Word. And if you're following along, if you're subscribing to my daily work on Matthew, right now I'm going through Matthew daily devotions. Today's reading was from Matthew 13, 54 to 58. And when he was come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, insomuch that they were astonished and said, whence is this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren James and Joseph, and Simon and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence is this man all these things? And they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, save in his own country, and in his own house. And he did not many great works there, because of their unbelief. These men who question Jesus have as having amazingly obtained wisdom because he was a carpenter's son. he was someone they knew as a child, whom they could have known. Also proved his direct link to King David. They should have known that. They probably did, and they didn't want to talk about it. They were firm in their disbelief. This is one of the things we see with Islam about Christianity. They are firm in their disbelief. That to me says something. They used Jesus' family as reasons not to believe, when they likely knew, again, this lineage to King David. Disbelief is more than not believing. It's strength and resolve that something is not. Christianity is based on a person's ability to express their belief in Jesus and his death on the cross for their sins, with his resurrection declaring who he truly was and what he did for us. He overcame death. This was his victory achieved for us because of his love for us. Jesus does not force someone to believe. He allows us to not believe. He allows us to have very little faith. He has no need for robots. Jesus died for us when we were yet sinners. We did not yet believe, and still he did this for us. Disbelief is seen as holding back Jesus' mighty works here. Look at it this way. Jesus is offering you something for free. Taste and see that the Lord is good. It was never the lack of belief. It's not this lack of belief that he's concerned that you just believe. It's a rejection of Jesus that causes all this. Dear Lord Jesus, strengthen us in our belief. Lord, make us be ones who speak boldly of you and your love. Lord, please use us to share your mighty works. In your name, Lord Jesus, amen. Now, I'm all excited because having Clare Lopez, and I'm trying to figure out where my questions went. Interesting. Okay, wrong sheet. That's what happened. Okay. So Clare Lopez, I'm going to just read a quick bio here. Clare Lopez is one of these rare individuals that I get very excited about having for numerous reasons. And here we go. She's the founder and president of Lopez Liberty LLC. Now, this is something we've got to watch for and pay attention to because, as I remember last time, she hadn't yet made a webpage, but we've got to find a way to support her with this work. Its mission is to alert Americans to national security threats, both international and from the Islamic movement, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Marxist communist collaborators in this country. This is one of the reasons why I think we need to listen to her more often. She gets that threat. John Guandolo gets that threat. There's not enough people on the stage that get this. She serves as senior advisory board member for the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, the NECSE, during the 2020 election season. She worked with Bishop E.W. Jackson and his STAND organization and acted as an advisor mentor to Special Forces students in the fall of 2020 DOD, Department of Defense course. From 2014 to 2020, Lopez served as vice president for research and analysis at the Center for Security Policy. She's been a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research and member of the board of advisors for the Canadian Mackenzie Institute. In 2016, she was named to Senator Ted Cruz's presidential campaign National Security Advisory Team. Lopez has been an instructor on Iran, Hezbollah, and the red, black, green axis for understanding the threat, and currently is an instructor for UTT's online National Security Academy. I'm going to cut here. I want to say, listen, this is a small part. One of the biggest things that that caught my eye, when I was reading it, was actually her work on the Team B study, Sharia, the Threat to America, which is, if you are listening to me and you haven't got that book, that is an absolute must buy. I keep telling people of books to buy. I'll make you go bankrupt buying books because I've been buying them myself. Sharia, the Threat to America is an absolute must buy. I'm guessing, Clare, you would agree with that.
Well, as editor and co-author of that particular book, I certainly would agree. Thank you.
Oh, it was a shocker. When I went through that book, it had pieces that I didn't get and didn't fully grasp at that point. So I think the timing was, it couldn't have been better. And I wish more people would pay attention to this type of material. So let's get right into these questions. It's an honor to have you back, and I want to say thank you again. One of the reasons I enjoy listening to you, and I keep saying it, is that I never have you visit without learning something myself. Since we're talking about the president of Egypt today and his surprise pardon of some Muslim Brotherhood members, I wanted to go back and review a little about how the Muslim Brotherhood got into trouble in Egypt for the first time, then build up to Al-Sisi's military coup. Clare, can you please share with us this important background information?
Sure. Well, we do have to go back in history a bit, back to the last century. And after World War I, the Ottoman Empire, having fought on the wrong side of that conflict, was taken apart. And what remained was the nation state of Turkey that we have today. Took over that state was Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, a nickname meaning father of the Turks. And he and the leadership that took over in the early 1900s, that would be, realized that they had lost the war, lost in World War I, because they were not keeping pace with the advancements of the Western alliance that had won World War I. And so they committed themselves to modernizing Turkey. And that meant administratively, civilly, the roads, the rails, the administrative, the civil system, whatever. But it also meant that they were going to secularize the government. Now, not the people. They remained very, very conservative and Islamic in their beliefs and practice. But the government would, under Ataturk, be secular. And as part of that, he abolished the last Islamic caliphate. Now, up until that point, there had always been a caliphate since the time of Muhammad, if he ever lived. But even there had been one or two at the same time, and they even fought each other sometimes. But there'd never been none. Now there was none. That was 1924. 4 years later, a bunch of students at the University of Cairo in Egypt, led by Hassan al-Banna, got together and they found this intolerable. This was a shock. This was appalling to the entire Islamic world at the time. They vowed to put the caliphate back together again. And they founded the Muslim Brotherhood to do that. That was the beginning of the Brotherhood. Now, at the time, there was still a monarchy in Egypt. But fast forward a bit, and there was a conflict, of course, between the Brotherhood and the government of Egypt. There were mutual assassinations, including Hassan al-Banna himself in, 1939, if I remember right. And then, of course, in 1953 was the Free Officers' Revolt, led by, yes, Muslim Brotherhood members, Mubarak, I'm sorry, not Mubarak, Sadat was one of those, and Gamal Abdel Nasser. And they overthrew the monarchy, took power themselves, Free Officers' Revolt in 1953, and then turned against the Brotherhood because now they were in power. So the point, I guess, that we can take from that is that in Egypt, you get two choices. You can have a military power dictatorship as ruler, or you can have the Muslim Brotherhood, but you can't have both. And they're going to be in conflict with each other more or less permanently, no matter that their Islamic ideology and beliefs are precisely the same. There's no daylight between them. They believe exactly the same things. And if anyone perhaps might have ever read I guess I call it a mini thesis of the current president of Egypt, Al-sisi, who came up through the military ranks and attended between, I think it was 2005, 2006, in Pennsylvania. He attended the U.S. Army War College there at Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And he wrote, I guess, what could be called a mini thesis. It's like 11 pages long or something. Read that at some point. It's not terribly long. It's in English. It's online. But it attests to Al-Sisi's belief in Islam, in the caliphate, restoration of the caliphate in some form or other, not the Islamic State, but a caliphate. So you can see there's no daylight between the beliefs of the Brotherhood, the Islamic doctrine of the Brotherhood, which is orthodox, absolutely, and that of the various military rulers that have taken power in Egypt. And that is why there's been, a consistency there, but also conflict, because again, only one can hold power. And right now it's the military. And honestly, given our choice, I think most of us would probably take the military, not the Brotherhood.
That's so much it. The only thing I think I would add is that the Muslim Brotherhood has a history of attacking those within the Egyptian government who disagree with them.
But it's about power. It's not about Islam.
Yes.
It's about who gets to be in power. That's all it's about.
Yes. Yes. It's exactly it. They're going to claim that they're not Islamic enough, but they're normally killing each other for that anyways. But yeah, it is totally about power. Who rules? Thank you. Okay, this next question. All right. I still remember you talking about this. Is you kind of got into this. I remember you talking about Al-sisi when he took power in Egypt, with a caution to us to watch and observe. Now, you talked about this paper that that he wrote in I think it was on Sharia you were talking about, and can you tell us where there's the importance in watching and observing new people in power rather than placing trust in them?
Well, I mean, because we understand the common doctrinal Orthodox Islamic philosophical roots of either the ruling military or the ruling Brotherhood, as it took power for a short time between 2011 and 2012, right? Before that was under Morsi, the government of Morsi, and now again back to the military. Since that point in time, the revolution that took place and overthrew the Brotherhood. But it was not because the Brotherhood was unfaithful to Islam. It was essentially over the economy, which is always in dire straits in Egypt. And oh, by the way, now recently, because Egypt needs to import so much of its caloric needs for its population at subsidized prices, and that a lot of those caloric needs are met by bread, this tying together to some other recent crises, the pending global food insecurity shortage. Egypt is going to have a very hard time, along with other countries of North Africa. Think of Algeria, Libya, think of the Horn of Africa, come on down to Sudan and Somalia and Ethiopia, Eritrea. They're all going to have, and others too, a very difficult time in importing enough wheat because they can't grow enough themselves. Agricultural land is at a premium in Egypt along the Nile, narrow strips, not enough. But so back to the revolution that kicked out Morsi and the Brotherhood, it was more about the economy and the ability of the Muslim Brotherhood to govern in any way that was meeting the needs of the population than it was per se about Islam itself.
It's funny because they voted for Sharia when they knew when they were voting for Morsi, they voted for Sharia, and they willingly wanted Sharia, and when they got it, then the economy went to hell.
Well, yeah, because I mean they were voting for one thing, but they got a collapsed economy in the bargain. You know, kind of. I can see some parallels to our recent situation here in the United States. No.
Yeah, I guess we could say we're looking at a man with dementia. I still want to exact pinpoint who the man is pulling the strings. I think it's Obama, but
I think it's a junta. In fact, it's not any one person; it's a junta. We're
that
being
would make
governed
sense.
by a junta.
I would more than willingly agree with that, because that makes far more sense than to be able to pin it on one person. Considering I don't think he was all that bright to begin with in some ways, but that's my personal thoughts. Wow. So when Al-sisi took power, what did the Muslim Brotherhood do that set many Egyptians against them? And you're talking about the economy, and what I'm thinking about is, I mean, they were really mad, but the big thing that they keep talking about with these court cases that keep coming up,
jobs and bread. Jobs and bread. That's Egypt. You don't meet the needs for jobs and bread, you're going to have revolution.
And then what the Muslim Brotherhood did was they attacked that police station, and that's what Al-sisi
yes,
did.
these are details.
Yeah.
But the basic reason, the basic foundational problem with the Brotherhood governance, administratively, bread and jobs.
Boy, that's scary.
Because here we go again, only
Yeah.
now it's a military government in power, although Al-sisi, nominally is retired from the military and is now a politician, but you get the idea.
Yeah. The jobs and bread stuff, it's coming back. I mean, wow. I always thought that was more of the aspect than the jobs and bread, that attack on the police station, because that's all I kept hearing about. But that explains a lot more. So the Muslim Brotherhood members that were freed this past month. I mean, I know he's freed large amounts of Muslim Brotherhood members in the past. He freed a huge amount in 2019, but for some reason, when I looked at this event, the thing that really has me, I mean, I can't even explain why I think there's something more significant with this one. I do realize they're talking about establishing a presidential pardon committee. I don't know if it's that, but there's something there that's seems more significant. Do you think there is something there as well?
There are very deep rifts in Egyptian society. Certainly between the military and the Brotherhood, that's perennial. Since the Free Officers' Revolt back in 1953, that has been a factor in Egyptian governance. So that rift remains, and El-Sisi perhaps is trying to, I don't know, ameliorate some of that rift, perhaps. Perhaps he sees, he's got to be able to see what's coming in terms of global economy, global food shortages. He's going to need his country united to face up to what is coming in terms of the global food crisis. We also see recently, though, within the past week or so, a few days really, that Egypt, together with Israel and Jordan too, right, have agreed to Egypt turning natural gas from Israeli fields under the Mediterranean, gas fields under the Mediterranean, to liquefied natural gas, because only Egypt has those refineries, and then shipping that natural gas to Europe to help ameliorate the shortages there, and to help Europe, Western Europe in particular, but Europe, to break away from dependence on oil and gas coming out of Russia. So that's a significant development right there, which I think has been in the works for a while, but it's been finalized now within the last few days.
That's a mind number. I mean, I wouldn't have. I mean, Russia sometimes has been best buddies with Egypt, so it's quite a statement. Wow.
Well, it's not so much that they're BFFs as it is that Egypt was a big customer, a client of Russia for its weapons. That was in competition to the United States providing weapons sales, and other European countries as well.
Wow. Like I said, I keep learning more. I know, again, I asked you to talk about Egypt, but one of the things that I keep listening to is what's going on in Turkey. And I swear they're in the news almost every day. And you have continually said, and without a break, that Turkey is not our ally anymore. And is there anything happening lately in respect to Turkey?
Lots happening with respect to Turkey. Of course, Turkey is, next to the United States, the largest in terms of armed forces member of NATO. Turkey, of course, borders not just on the Black Sea, but also, of course, commands the entrances either side for the Bosporus, where Istanbul is located, of course. And so right now, back to the food question, back to the grain shortage that is pending, imminent. The problem, of course, is that so much of the world's grain, and it's not just wheat, it's also corn and barley, and also seed oils, which go into cooking oil. And we could also mention fertilizer and pesticides and the ingredients that go into making pesticides. That affects the American farmer directly. But so much of those exports are being bottled up inside of Ukraine right now, which typically ships them out through seaports on the Black Sea. Mariupol, of course, on the Sea of Azov, you go through one more strait, the Strait of Kerch, right, to get to the Sea of Azov. Mariupol having fallen to the Russians, and it's a wasteland, completely wrecked, bombed to smithereens. But come through the Strait of Kerch then, past Crimea, and you're now into the Black Sea, where the next target for Russia there on that coast would seem to be Odessa. We'll see how far that goes. United States and various European countries are, I think, rushing coastal defense weaponry to Ukraine. That would be shore-to-ship missiles, like, for example, harpoons, to defend Odessa. But the bottom line here, that the usual ports of export for Ukraine to get its grain products and the seed oils and so forth out of Ukraine are out of service right now. And it's not just because the ports themselves are being bombarded and attacked by Russia, but because areas, large areas of the Black Sea are mined. There are mines sowed all over the Black Sea near these different ports, in particular Odessa, of course. And so getting those food crops out and the fertilizer and the pesticides is a huge problem right now, and contributing greatly to the shortages that I just talked about. But bring it home to America. American farmers, I don't know if people realize this, American farmers depend about 50% on fertilizer and pesticide components, exports out of Russia and Ukraine combined, for US farmers to plant, to harvest, to bring a crop to harvest. 50%. Okay. Not only can they not necessarily get all that right now, just physically can't get it, but even when they can, the prices are jacked up so high, 400% year on year or more at this point. I don't know. So factor all of that in. Your question was about Turkey. Can Turkey help to escort cargo ships out of some of those Ukrainian ports through the Bosphorus out into the Mediterranean and out? Well, perhaps, but they have to demine the waters first. And that's a huge task. The waters of the Black Sea are just full of mines right now. So Turkey has a role to play, yes, but not sure how that's going to work out exactly because of the barriers, the problems I'm just talking about. The other thing about Turkey is that as a member of NATO, each member of NATO has veto power over the proposed entry of any other new country to the treaty. And as we know, Sweden and Finland would like to join NATO, have made application to join NATO, but because Sweden harbors a number of Kurdish groups with which Turkey is at odds, to put it mildly, Turkey is blocking the Swedish application for NATO. And if Sweden doesn't come in, maybe Finland won't either. So Turkey has a big role to play right now, and it's not being very helpful.
Now, isn't Turkey it's supposed to be the quote Fertile Crescent area, and we're looking at are we talking about sorry, not Turkey, but that's Iran and Iraq. Isn't Turkey a very fertile soil area, or no?
Turkey has agricultural land, but it is not, to the best of my knowledge, a great exporter of the grains that are so needed right now.
Huh. I didn't even think of that. I hadn't even thought about their part that they could play. And who's responsible for the majority of the mining? It sounds like it's more than
Russia.
one person.
Well, I should say both. Okay, Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine has mined waters to defend against the attacking Russians. Russians have mined the waters to prevent other shipping from coming to the assistance of Ukraine to unblock those ports. It's both.
Well, I wish my friend Todd was here. He's a Navy guy, and he would be he would be all over these mining questions because, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine being on a Navy ship or whatever that you're going to try to be brought to shore and have to deal with all that. That's just unbelievable.
Well, they can't. I mean, they can't even consider moving in and out of any of the ports of Ukraine on the Black Sea until at least a channel, if not the whole area, but a channel for the ships can be demined. And that's a very intensive process. It's not something that can be done easily or quickly.
And I'm going to see if I can get back here. There we go. This is a, like I said, you always surprise me. I did not expect that it would be so much economic issue. I had always, like you said, what I was looking at was details. I did not grasp that. Wow. In the United States, since I have a little bit more time, you really got me there. I did not expect that. In the United States, what would you deem the biggest threat today from the Muslim Brotherhood? I know I didn't ask that beforehand. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood is still active, of course. Probably, I guess what I would say the biggest threat is infiltration by way of interfaith dialogue. And that would be with, Christian denominations of various kinds and also with the Jewish congregations, too.
That is what Eric has been working on, who's down here. Eric, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Hi, Claire. It's
Hi, Eric.
really good to finally get to interact with you. I've been following you for years. I'm not a sycophant or anything, but I have been following you, and I listen to you quite a bit, and I really love your analysis on world affairs, especially when you're dealing with Paul, but also on the Com Trento. Yeah, I had a couple questions. You were talking about the supply shortage of grains, of certain type of cooking oils, fertilizers, pesticides. And I'll tell you, this type of Roundup stuff that I buy today has gone up fourfold since last year. It's absolutely insane. And how that strip coming out of Odessa down through the Black Sea into the Bosphorus and through Turkey, how far offshore is that mined? Do we know this? Number two,
I don't know that myself. I think it's primarily closer into the ports of Ukraine, but I can't give you nautical miles. I don't know that.
Okay, all right, but don't we have like anti-mining type naval assets to clear that?
Well, sure we do, but if we were to deploy those, or Turkey were to, as members of NATO, that would put us in direct confrontation with Russian naval vessels in the Black Sea, which they are reluctant to do.
But are they not in violation of international shipping?
Well, I mean, they've just invaded an entire country, committed war crimes, pulverized its cities, slaughtered its civilians.
Right.
And by the way, they are also Russians are bombing grain silos and grain storage warehouses deliberately. War crimes?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a stupid question, but
It's not stupid, but
follow-up question
yeah.
would be, do they have any rail assets or any?
Yes.
Let's think of fuel. How are they getting gasoline? I mean, how are they getting fuel to their gas stations? How are people even?
Well, I mean, a lot of the supply of whether it be humanitarian aid or military aid, weapons coming in from the West, overland, from countries like Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and so forth, down from further north from the Balkans, from the Baltics, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, coming overland. Yes, there are problems with the rail lines, and some of those rail yards, rail, I guess, depots you might call them, have been bombed by the Russians. But that is the primary way right now that supplies of any kind, humanitarian or military materiel, can get in.
Are the Ukrainian farmers planting this year?
Yeah, unbelievably, they have. I read a number somewhere, if I recall it correctly, that something like 70% of their fields were able to be planted this year, although they get bombed too. The fields get bombed by the Russians, but they did plant this year. The heartland, I mean, Ukraine is a huge country,
Right.
and the middle part of it has not been invaded, bombarded to some extent. Although that happens more to the east, the Donbass region, the south, along the waters, the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. And then further out to the west, the Russians have also bombed some of the crossover points for that resupply of weaponry. But in the middle, where all that, terrific farmland lies, I think I read somewhere that something like 70% of the crops were able to be planted this year. Now, the question will be, can they be harvested, and can they be transported and exported?
Well, and again, being from a farming community myself, I know it's not only having the ability to have, just the gas alone. That was my
Yeah.
question. How are these guys even getting gasoline, diesel into the country to plant these things? But then you have the maintenance, the application of the pesticides during the summer months, and then also the harvesting equipment. How do you get parts for those into the country? How do you get the maintenance? People that perform the maintenance on all these things. So the logistical part of itself is just, and then at the same time you got to have AAA covering your backside when you're out there combining. I did have one other thing that I was gonna. I'll stop, Paul. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Oh, you're doing good. I'm not.
My show. I have a show on Sunday and Tuesday that I'd like to invite you to sometime.
Thank you. I will.
He comes to my show all the time and interrupts me, so I think this is a little payback. Okay, you made an allusion to, and I thought it was kind of. I don't know if it's kind of just an off flippant remark that you made. If Muhammad ever existed at the beginning, where does your stance on that? I mean, is that
I have certainly read. I've read Robert Spencer in particular, who's done a great deal of research on this very question: did Muhammad ever exist? And the truth is, after reading Robert's writing and meticulous research, footnoted to a fare thee well, there's no actual concrete evidence that Muhammad ever existed. There isn't any. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things written about him by people 100 or more years after his alleged death in 632 CE. But there's no coins, there's no contemporaneous writing, or not just by Muslims, followers of Muhammad supposedly, or of Islam, but by those, for example, being besieged, being attacked. There's no reference to a Muhammad. There is reference to the armies pouring out of the peninsula, for example, later to be the Arabian Peninsula, but there's no contemporaneous reference to a person, Muhammad.
Eric, isn't this something that you've been talking about, this exact topic?
Right. Yeah. I was just going to allude to the fact that we discussed several times on the show the absence of evidence for a 7th century Mecca. I mean, just the city itself. There's just nothing. It's like a black hole. There's nothing there. And I have not read Robert Spencer's book. I have it back here. It's on my summer reading list.
I have a pile like that too. Actually, I have a whole bookcase waiting.
Well, that's a long story. Yeah,
that's all of us.
Topics that we broach on the show quite a bit is, we talk about Islamic history and the lack thereof, and how it's completely supported by evidence or writings collected and written down, you know, two and a half centuries after the life and death of this alleged character Muhammad. But I appreciate your time and your expertise on this, Clare. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Eric. Good to talk with you too.
Red, did you have a question? Oh, I guess we lost Connie.
Oh no, I was just listening. No, I was just listening. But no, I don't believe Muhammad existed. And yeah, that's it. And let's go, Brandon. That's it. Go ahead.
My biggest hope, I guess, for everything right now is we're hoping for a free and fair election, and I don't know that we will get that, but that's my hope. Oh, we have a question here. I'm just going to post this up. All right. Do you think there has been a theological shift in the Muslim Brotherhood from somewhat pan-Arab secularism to Salafi Wahhabi beliefs? And if so, what effect did this have?
Well, actually, looking at what's going on in Saudi Arabia and some of the other Gulf Cooperation Council states, the GCC states, like the Emirates, for example, we're seeing in the new young leader of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, the son of the King Salman, but who really, as a youthful, dynamic young leader in his middle 30s, is really running affairs in Saudi Arabia now, as his father, the king, is quite older and not so well in health. There's been a real tectonic shift. Part of that has to do, of course, with President Donald Trump. And I remember watching his and listening to his speech when he traveled to Riyadh in May of 2017 and addressed the assembled, I call them the assembled mob bosses of the Sunni world, assembled there by King Salman. And Trump addressed them as the capo di tutti capi, if you know what I mean. This is a guy, Trump, who built hotels in New Jersey and New York and dealt with the mob. He was the capo di tutti capi when he went there, and they knew it. And I had the impression that tectonic plates were moving then. So fast forward another 5 years now to the present, and what we're seeing is that under Mohammed bin Salman, he is moving Saudi Arabia in a modernizing direction. Does this mean that they are abandoning Islam? No, not even slightly, not at all. However, I will say this, they are secularizing public life in Saudi Arabia to an extent that none of us ever dreamed possible. And of course, back to President Trump and the Abraham Accords that so far include 4 members, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, but knowing that none of that could have happened behind the scenes together with Israel without the acquiescence, if not the strong actual support of Saudi Arabia. And that means MBS, as he's called. So in public life in Saudi Arabia, MBS has been on the warpath against the Brotherhood. Their power in Saudi Arabia is broken. It is kaput. MBS has got dozens upon dozens of Salafi clerics in prison. The religious police, called the Mudahween, who used to patrol the streets looking for, I don't know, loose hijabs or girls, you know, texting to boys in a cafe or some such thing. They have no authority anymore. And the real shocker for me happened a couple of years ago, I think it was 2020, when the Saudi Supreme Court literally legally banned flogging as a punishment for crime in the kingdom. Now, flogging, as you know, is a hudud punishment. That is the first time I've ever seen Saudi Arabia officially go against Sharia, Islamic law. But that's what the Supreme Court did. In addition to that, other social mores, not Islam itself, except for the flogging part, but social mores. Women being allowed in cafes, mixed company cafes, you know, men and women. theaters, sports arenas, things like that, driving. These are social mores. There's nothing in Islamic law about any of that. But he's loosening these things little by little. And that's what I mean about the tectonic plates moving, in addition to the Abraham Accords, which are absolutely stunning. So the power of the Brotherhood is broken in Saudi Arabia, not because they disagree in any major way, except maybe the flogging, on Islam or Islamic doctrine itself. No, but because the Brotherhood challenged the authority of the ruling family of Saud. That's why. And there cannot be a challenge to the House of Saud in Riyadh. And so the Brotherhood had to go down. Furthermore, internationally, as you probably know, the Saudis, long time, were the foremost supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. And no more. That stopped at least 4 or 5 years ago. I think a decision probably was taken at the senior levels of the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the 57-member international grouping of all Islamic governments in the world. That includes nation states plus the Palestinian Authority, making 57. I think a decision was taken there to kind of, if you will, pass the baton, and it passed from Saudi Arabia to Turkey. Turkey and the AK Party, Justice and Development Party, a Muslim Brotherhood party, just the party of the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, they have taken over the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide and right here in the United States. The Saudis don't do Brotherhood anymore. They just don't. They're out of that business. MBS is modernizing Saudi Arabia economically away from purely extractive industry, meaning petroleum, oil and gas, and towards other kinds of technology. Another reason why the GCC countries are so interested in working with Israel, because they're dynamic, technological leaders in so many fields, agriculture, medicine, academia, water, technology, all of that. They see the benefits of that. This is realpolitik. Okay, this is not about Islam. This is not about doctrine. This is realpolitik. So Brotherhood done for with the Saudis, at least for right now.
Wow. I mean, we saw this coming, and I was just waiting to see if it would be as solid as it was. I've been watching MBS. I've just wondered, originally I was wondering, is he going to stand strong and the stuff? When he had the people who were involved with, I believe it was called the Golden Chain, that were involved with the.
Oh, that was way back during pre 9/11 years.
No, yeah, and he had some of the financiers.
He was still a kid back then.
Yeah, but he had some of those financiers just arrested within the past. I think.
Yes, he
put him in a hotel. I remember that.
Right. MBS, that is the Crown Prince, upon really rising to power. Yes, he's still the Crown Prince, not the king yet, because his father is still in control nominally. But to show his sort of taking the reins, taking power, if you will, when he first, a few years ago, began to rise in the power that was delegated to him by his father, he moved against some of the most wealthy Saudis on the premise that they were corrupt. And of course they were corrupt.
Yes, they were.
And he put them up in the Ritz-Carlton in, I think it was Riyadh, but it could have been Jeddah, I forget which.
I'm pretty sure it was Riyadh.
And it kind of shook them down, until they ponied up and turned over chunks of their wealth, which eventually they all did. But he had established his power. He had established his authority. And that's what that was about.
So you have Yue is saying thank you, and she's and he's agreeing with you. So yep, I definitely agree with you. I was in Saudi from 2016 to 2021. The reforms were unbelievably fast. Young population definitely helped with the so far seamless transition, which is.
Well, notice who is currently the Saudi ambassador to the United States. Her name is Rima bint Bandar Al Saud.
Oh.
Rima bint Bandar, bint, of course, daughter of Bandar, the former ambassador, Bandar bin Sultan. Bandar was one of the younger sons of the former defense minister of Saudi Arabia, Sultan, Prince Sultan. Okay. Bandar was ambassador to the United States for many years and formed that especially close relationship with President George W. Bush in the lead up to and after the attacks of 9/11, in which the Saudis were complicit. So this is Bandar's daughter. Now, the successor to Bandar as ambassador to the United States was Turki bin Faisal Al Saud, whom Bandar's daughter Rima, follow me here, currently the ambassador to the United States, married. They're divorced now. But so Bandar's daughter married the successor to Ambassador Bandar to the United States. Now Rima bint Bandar Al Saud is the ambassador to the United States. And she, as I think among this younger generation, more modern, more willing to see women play a more engaged role in public life, meaning in academia, in professions, in business, even in sports, and so forth. And she herself is a good example of that, being involved in many of these things, but a champion for women's rights, and very publicly so. They got a long way to go. Let's not, fool ourselves. They've got a long way to go, but things are changing. And again, these are social mores. This is not foundational doctrine of Islam.
Yes.
Social mores that are loosening and changing. And why? Because Saudi Arabia desperately needs outside involvement and investment in its economy to modernize. We talked about technology before. Foreign investment is desperately needed. Well, you're not going to get a whole bunch of foreign investment if they have to go to Chop Chop Square every Friday and watch heads being chopped off. That's just not going to work. And so they had to back off of some of that. But again, this is realpolitik. This is to keep the House of Saud ruling in Riyadh, to preserve the royal family.
And the best way to preserve when you're I like the realpolitik. It works. The best way to keep your government surviving is you have to avoid the brain drain, which is, I think, one of the things that they had been experiencing, because you got somebody who was highly intelligent and they couldn't continue. They'd have to go someplace else to further pursue things. And now they're allowing, now they've created more of a venue for that growth within Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, absolutely true. But also encouraging the 50% of the population that is female, thereabouts.
That is exciting.
You sideline 50% of your population capital, if you will, in terms of, drive and ambition and innovation and women typically in Saudi Arabia were very well educated. They were graduating from university at very high rates, but then the doors previously to professional careers were closed to them. Well, that doesn't make sense economically, and so MBS is changing that. And Rima bint Bandar bin Salman Al Saud is a very good example of that.
It's exciting. It's exciting to hear. We'll see where we get. Again, a lot of this game is watching and observing. I hope we get to see more of this type of thing with Saudi Arabia. And we're going to continue to keep a watch on Turkey. I don't trust Erdogan for nothing, but
well, I mean, he is a neo-Ottoman jihadi. I mean,
yes.
Erdogan has, I think, ambitions. I don't know how realistic that is at the moment, but ambitions to reestablish the Ottoman Empire. not realistic. But that's how he sees himself.
I always expected when ISIS was in power that if they would just walk across that border and say, "Hey, would you be our caliphate? Would you lead it?" He would have said yes in a heartbeat.
Your listener, Islam One Big Lie, apparently has a question.
Oh,
Watch the chat. Watch the chat room.
I am. Are you?
that's me.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Claire, I've watched you in months past, and I appreciate your honesty and your intellect on your research. Okay. Now, why is America, like the left, embracing and we're taking in the Islamic Brotherhood? Why is the left so much against Saudi Arabia and with Iran? Can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, I think the tilt, if you will, in U.S. Foreign policy toward Iran goes back at least to the Obama administrations, 2008 till 2017, basically. And I think that under Obama, where of course many of those officials now are in the Biden administration, they've come back and are now in the Biden administration, and their view of the Middle East was that they needed or wanted anyway to shift the balance of power. Now, when President Bush took out Saddam Hussein, and I totally agree Saddam Hussein had to go. He absolutely had WMD, certainly active BW and CW programs, and a latent but perfectly intact nuclear program. He harbored Al-Qaeda, remember Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, on his territory. He paid Palestinian suicide bombers to kill Jews. He had to go. I agree with that. But by taking out Saddam Hussein and doing nothing about the mullahs in Iran next door, Bush busted, if you will, the very rough but extant balance of power in the Middle East between Sunnis and Shiites. And very naturally, the Shiites were advantaged, Iran being the largest Shiite country. And as we can see now, have basically taken over Iraq, as well as whatever is left of Syria and Lebanon, and making a play for Yemen, surrounding, that is, the Arabian Peninsula geographically, if you picture that. And so I think the Obama administration and those officials now from there in the Biden administration had the objective of tilting the balance even further in favor of the Shiites of Iran. Maybe partly because the Sunnis are more numerous, both in numbers of countries that are Sunni and in overall population. Iran's population right now is something like, 86 million, maybe something like that. But you take together all the population of the Sunni countries in the region, and there are many more. And they wanted to tilt the balance. They also wanted to be the un-Trump. Whatever Trump wanted to do, they were against. So I think that the Obama people and those in those administrations, people like Robert Malley, people like Jake Sullivan, and now in the Biden administration, I think they very consciously want Iran to dominate the Middle East, and they are willing to allow, even encourage and empower Iran to go nuclear in order to achieve that. And it's all about letting the Shiites have the balance of power. Of course, they're anti-Semitic to the core, so anything to do with Israel and any who would align with it now, the Abraham Accords, the GCC countries, and as I've said before, Saudis behind that, even if not overtly a member yet, they're anathema. They get kicked to the curb. Now, of course, President Biden is on his way to the Middle East. I think it's early part of next week. And he's supposedly going to meet with MBS, probably groveling on his knees, begging for oil because he doesn't want to allow America to become energy independent here at home, and he is, you know, doing his very best to destroy our energy industry here at home. But nevertheless, the animosity, I don't think MBS is going to be fooled for a heartbeat. He will realize exactly what this is about. The Biden delegation trip to Saudi Arabia. But that's what I think it is. I think they want, I think the Biden administration and those same officials from the Obama administrations want Iran to go nuclear in order, and when I say go nuclear, I mean to be able to deploy deliverable nuclear weapons. I think they're pretty much almost there. The Israelis will know when they cross the line, the final red line, or they will prevent them from doing so. But they want Iran to have that nuclear capability in order, number one, to, as they see it, balance Israel, but also the larger surrounding Sunni population of the region.
We have an unusual question here from Rad, which is, I'm guessing he may be on his way home. Is the reason why he's not asking himself. He writes, do you think the real Islam, if ISIS has anything to do with, I guess he's wondering if ISIS has any, you would think ISIS has any influence towards this push on modernization? Well,
no. And of course, ISIS has not existed since 2014. In June of 2014, then ISIS, Islamic State in Iraq and al-Sham, or in Arabic, it's Daesh, that's the acronym, Dawlati Islamiyya fi al-Iraq wa al-Sham, stopped existing. And they changed the name simply to Islamic State or Dawlati Islamiyya. Why? Because it no longer is confined to just Iraq and al-Sham. Al-Sham, of course, is the greater Levant, the entire Middle East region curving down around the southeastern littoral of the Mediterranean Sea from Turkey all the way around, all the way to Egypt.
So this is Rad.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but
anymore. It's IS.
Well, actually, my question was, sorry for my Taiwanese. My question was this, is this. Do you think that the realization, okay, of ISIS, you know, what I consider real Islam in the pure, okay, filter, that what they were doing is what they were, every single Muslim, they all want what ISIS was doing. They just want to do it further later on down the road. What I'm saying is that when they were confronted with pure Islam in its rare, unfiltered form in their face, that they decided, maybe this is not what we want. You know,
it wasn't about Islam per se.
Modernization.
Again, it was not about Islam per se, and there's no division between them about Islam or its doctrine in any way. Again, just as with the Brotherhood, it is what challenges the rule of the House of Al-Saud. That's the bottom line. Or what challenges, you know, the rule of the Al-Thanis in the Emirates. What challenges the rule of the leadership of any of these GCC countries. That's all that matters. It's not about Islam. It's about what challenges their rule. And at the time, then ISIS had quite a military presence marching through the Middle East and certainly in Iraq, and then, you know, what was ever left of what used to be called Syria. They were a serious military threat. Now less so, but it's not about Islam. It's about what can threaten the rulers of these emirates or kingdoms.
To take them out, right?
Well, to supplant them,
yes.
Replace them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But okay, so I can see your point on that. But to replace them with what?
Sorry, say that again, please.
I said, okay, so I can see your point, but to replace them with what? Democracy, communism,
a pure Islamic State. You know, as
exactly.
they have in, you know, places like Raqqa in the city in northern then called Syria.
Exactly. Okay. All right. No, go ahead. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue on.
Thank you.
I had a lot of questions for you today.
Okay, so they want to try to replace the crown prince to now move in, which would be the second step. How they see Islam?
Well, they have no chance of doing that. I mean, even as it is gaining strength again in places between Iraq and Syria, the Islamic State has no military power to oust any of these rulers of the GCC countries, including Saudi Arabia. There's no chance.
Well, what
It's
about Russia? Because a lot of the Muslims I've heard and, read on social platforms, they're all for Russia. So what if they side with Russia and they say, hey, we need to take out the Saudi prince? So now you got a superpower.
I think Russia's otherwise occupied at the moment, and Russia, of course, faces its own demographic, if no other kind of threat from, for example, the Sunni states that basically surround it to the south. The 5 Central Asian states of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan are Sunni. And then if you go to the Caucasus, those areas of that isthmus, the isthmus that is the Caucasus, to include republics of Russia like Ingushetia and Dagestan and Chechnya, they're Sunni Muslim. That is a threat to the Russians demographically, whose birth rate is down around, I don't know, 1.5 children per woman per lifetime, something like that. It's a demographic threat more than anything else from the Sunnis, which is why Russia sees less of a threat with a Shiite state like Iran, which can be its client in terms of nuclear technology, for example, and is further distant away, geographically speaking, than those immediate bordering Sunni populations.
interesting. It's very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you,
Wow.
Claire.
Very, very powerful. I always enjoy having you, Claire. You've given us. I'm going to have to replay this because you've given us a lot of good information. I think, I think we have to keep fighting on. And as patriots, I usually ask my guests one big question, and it's a lot of us. We want positive things to happen in the future. Is there something you think we should be working on to make America better at this point?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Bring this back home. I do speak and I travel a lot, either by webinar virtually or sometimes in person around the country. And I will tell you that the American people are so much more educated, aware, and engaged in the civic process now today in 2022 than they ever were before November 2020. Part of that has to do with lockdowns and the slim little silver lining of that, during which parents looked over the shoulders of their kids doing homework on the laptop on the kitchen table and were absolutely horrified and appalled and then very angry at what they saw, became engaged, challenging school boards, even running for school board themselves. And then also with the election integrity, different legislative hearings in different states like Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia. And they are now getting engaged at that level, signing up to be poll watchers, signing up to be election officials, or simply petitioning their elected officials, for example, in several states, to get rid of ballot drop boxes. That's become law in states. To demand voter ID. That's become law in some states. And it's going on. It's continuing. And so the first of all, the awareness, the education of the American people, I think, is a really positive sign. And then their willingness to become engaged. As parents, maybe first of all, that happened first. But now, as citizen patriots all over the country, I mean, look what just happened in some of these early primary races across the country these last weeks, and some more to come, probably leading up to what's expected to be a real tsunami, a red tsunami in the midterm elections of November this year, 2022. But just the one example, which is getting a lot of airtime, of course, is the election of Maya, what's her name? Flores, right? Maya Flores.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
In that special election down in Texas, flipped a completely, for over 100 years, Democratic district red. I mean, she won by, 8 points, I believe, in a district that Biden carried, that every Democrat since the beginning of time ever carried. It's now red. That is a special election, just happened there. And she, Maya Flores, I believe it's Flores, is not only a legal, lawful immigrant, came with her parents as a small child from Mexico, but the first such person to be elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. So take that as a harbinger of, hopefully, of things to come. And I think we're seeing Americans wake up. I really do. And
yeah, it's Myra Flores. I double checked. Yes.
Myra Flores. Okay. The true, American citizen, patriot, constitutional Americans, we way outnumber anything else that's trying to spread tyranny in this country. And I think once aware of that electoral clout that we have, I think it's going to be a different story coming up pretty soon.
Well, Claire, I'm one of those elected, one of those officials that works elections, and I can't say I agree with you anymore, because it's 100. You got to be in for this 100%. If you want the elections to be fair, you got to become part of the process. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm going to be working the primary here in New York State, and I'm going to be working. We have early elections. I'm going to work that, but the goal here is you want everything to be safer, and the only way you can do that is get involved. You can't say I'm trusting someone. You can no longer do that, because we just saw what happened in the last presidential election.
Islam One Big Lie has one last question. If you're looking in the chat.
Yes. Go ahead, Connie. Go ahead.
Hi, Claire. I sure do. Thank you. Are you willing to speak a little bit about our last presidential election, and whether you believe or disbelieve that it was a fair election?
Well, I think we've got a lot of questions that remain about that election. I think that the questions are valid. I think that a lot of the testimony that we've heard at various legislative sessions in places I named, like Arizona, like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin, like Michigan, like Georgia, are valid questions. A lot of fraud and cheating has been absolutely uncovered. I watched Dinesh D'Souza's movie, 2000 Mules. It's mind-blowing. I recommend it to anyone who's able to watch that. There is a lot that we still need to be asking.
I'm sorry, Darcy, what did you say?
Said I watched 2000 Mules a few weeks ago, and I am appalled at what happened.
Yeah,
and
that movie has gotten, I don't know how many. I think it's millions at this point of viewers.
I haven't met lately a Democrat who is excited about Biden. So
it's a little difficult.
Well, here's the thing.
To put it mildly. Yeah.
If I could just chime in here for a bit on this. Everybody's expecting a red wave, except the Democrats. They seem unfazed by all this.
Oh, they know it. No. They absolutely know it. They're in a panic. They're in panic mode.
Then why are they doubling down on all the failed policies? They're unfazed.
Because they're in a panic. Because they're in a panic. They don't know what else to do.
Brad, they just had this past week, Brad, they had a major, was it Don Lemon, I think, was trashing Biden.
You
no,
are
I know that. I see all
Yeah.
that. But what I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is this. Yeah, the media, the Democrats that are not in the know. Okay, ones that are like really scared about this. The ones that are in the know, administration, and Nancy Pelosi and everybody else who are doubling down on this insanity.
Where else are they going to go? You know, what else are they going to do? They're going to pull a Janet Yellen and say, "Oh, sorry, I was wrong." I don't see that happening.
What I'm saying is this: they already know the fix is in.
Well, we don't know
They're going to do what they did. No, they're going to do what they did. They're going to do what they did on November of 2020, but on a larger scale, do it, okay, with the congressional elections.
Well, except that they can't, because a lot of those shady practices, shall we say, have been banned now in so many places, everywhere from state legislatures on down to county and district level, banned, changed.
We'll see.
Even
Will they obey those bans, though? That's my question.
Exactly.
Will they obey the bans and not cheat all over
in New
again?
York State,
Well,
they
they may
got
try
caught.
to cheat, but people's eyes are open now.
Yeah,
It's
in New
not
York
gonna be
State,
the
they
time
got
at all.
caught sending out
Okay.
numerous absentee ballots to people who never requested. I actually called and I was furious. I did not request an absentee ballot. You're breaking the law by sending me one. And I called them. They said, no, we had a vote downtown saying we can do this. That's against election law. I said, you cannot break election law. It's a state law. It's not a county law. So we had quite a go around. But there's a lot of, even in Libland, New York State.
Was this just recently? I'm sorry. Was this just recently, or was this?
No, this was. So this ballot, this fight was this is when they handed out during the presidential election, they did this.
Okay.
And I was fighting with them. And since then, I think with all the arguments and that have been going on with election law, because of some connections I still have, there's a lot of discussion in New York State in particular. We have to have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans at each polling. Not polling site, but each machine. So we have, and that's the state law. What killed me is I learned by going through and taking my election inspector class again, that there's only 18 states with this law that you have to have 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. You have to have an equal amount. Otherwise that machine has to close. And I was not aware there's only 18.
So the officials are they think that the voters don't know about these laws, so they're trying to sneak that in there.
Well, I think that where I have personally seen in the past the elections being manipulated and changed, it has always been with the absentee ballots. I have a friend who ran. He's pretty much the declared winner. They said they was very close. They had the reported 8 absentee ballots that were present yet to be counted. All of a sudden there were 18 absentee ballots. And the other guy got them all. Well, maybe 1. And it was that close. I mean, that it was just, and the guy who didn't want him in was actually in charge of the political party. Of the Republican Party, and this was a primary. So I mean, I've seen those things happen locally, and it's what I usually see is it's from my perspective, it's usually the absentee ballots, and that's why I think that 2020 shutdown was their goal. I mean, when it was part of their gain, when they just looked at it as a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard from somebody. I'm sorry, Claire.
I'm just going to say I'm going to have to jump here. I'm out of time.
Okay.
But
thank you.
Just very last, thoughts or questions. Do I have?
No, thank you so much for coming in.
YouTube channel? No, I do not have a YouTube channel, nor do I yet have a website. But you can find me at Citizens Commission on National Security, the United West, the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, American Truth Project, And I can always use more followers on social media at Clare M. Lopez on Twitter. My name, Clare M. Lopez on Facebook, Lopez Liberty on Telegram, and most recently joined up at Clarecho, Clarecho. That's my Slavic nickname, on Truth Social.
Perfect. Thank you, dear. God
Thank
bless
you
you.
for all
Thank
you're
you, all of
doing.
you.
Please keep it up. You're helping us learn to do a better job as Americans. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us tonight. Appreciate it. And all your questions, too.
God bless.
Okay, take care, everybody. Good night.
I
Wow,
always enjoy
wow,
having
wow,
her
wow.
because I always
Wow.
learn.
Yeah,
I
I've been
never-
listening to her for months in the past, and man, I think I found her on Facebook, and I put her on my Facebook thingy, and wow, I've been so impressed since I've met her, and it's only been like 4 months past, and I was high on her for like 3 days, just listening as much as I could to this dear lady. Wow, thank you, Paul.
I caught her in videos. I caught her in our radio bosses, Vito and Al, had her on quite a lot, and then Gotti had her on, and I had the chance to run into her and Frank Gaffney and a few others, John Guandolo, in a couple different settings, and I consider her a fountain of knowledge that I'm just never ceased to be amazed. The information she has is always better than whatever I have. So it's more accurate and more up to date. And I consider that I had not thought about the extent of how economics is changing things. I guess I'm talking with friends every week, and I have a friend who's former Navy, and he's constantly talking about some of these things about what's going to happen if and then we have Dr. Kufar, who's very, very concerned about having enough food. What happens if we're not ready? And I've heard that in churches where we need to be the best stewards. So if our neighbor needs help, we can be able to help them as well, not just ourselves. So it's kind of concerning, all this concern about food. Rad talked about, I think it was a very, very important question about how do you, and Eric asked it, and he was talking about how do you support, I mean, if you're in Ukraine and you've got your crops out there, how do you, it's one thing to seed your land, but you can't, I mean, the maintenance factor, the lack of diesel, I mean, it's I'm just amazed that we still have what we have. I had never understood how much we're affected by. I know a lot of articles and a lot of things have been out there about how we're being affected by the Ukraine war. Some people actually say that this war in Ukraine is there to cause difficulties here. I'm not sure how to take that. I'm still watching. Is this going to make America more difficult in the near future? I don't have any answers yet. A lot of what I say to do is keep watching, and I say keep watching because there's so much happening. Yes, Darcy.
Like point, there has been a lot of news about that January 6th thing, and I have to wonder what's going on behind the scenes that our attention's being drawn from.
Well, I don't think they're achieving what they wanted because the information that's out there contradicts their change in story. And I don't think it's going to work because the information was out there long before they decided to rewrite the story. Our danger is this, and I can say this from having students who were born after 9/11. As time goes on, the people who weren't alive on January 6th or weren't watching those videos of the policemen escorting people into the Capitol, those are going to be disappearing from the internet if they're not already. One of the things I've been lifetime banned for was sharing from LinkedIn, was sharing those videos. And they don't want people to know this. So I had received at least 10 or 12 of those videos from a person who was running for Congress, who had contacts with our last president, and he was sharing them out in multiple manners. I could probably get a hold of him and have him share that. We could maybe do a whole session on who actually is it an insurrection if you get invited into the Capitol. After looking at these videos, I never cease to be amazed at the amount of material he gave me. I think the goal with the January 6th committee is to show their disconnectedness with America. They don't realize that's the goal, but that's what's actually happening. They're showing that their belief that America is ignorant. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a belief that they are above it all, and that that America, the average American is stupid. And they're just continually pushing that right now.
Yeah, it's kind of like, in my opinion, the emperor's new clothes.
I like that. I think my pastor actually said that this past week. Yeah, it's you have to sit there. Well, I brought up the thing with Al-sisi because here I did not expect Clare's answers, and this is kind of going around the circle, but she looks at things differently. And let me say this, I think it's important that we all gather as much information, but there's another important aspect in that. We have to share what we learn. That's where we're in the public schools, they now teach things like Islam spread through cultural diffusion instead of saying it spread through war. You convert or you die, or you pay the jizya. That's it. And if you were polytheist, you just die. I mean, you convert or die. There's no pay the jizya. And that's why there's so many Egyptians wiped out. That's why India has a true hatred of Islam, because the massive, massive slaughters in India. You can read that in Al-Tabari's histories. They applaud it. They talk about tearing down their idols and turning their idols into walkways for their mosques. Yeah. So this information's there. What do we do with this information? If we want to change the way things are going, find a way to, I'm not saying you have to get involved in politics. I am saying you have to get involved in American life. That means more than anything else. And in whatever country you're in, you want things to change, you have to get involved. I've written law. Why? Because I got involved. Only because I didn't believe I couldn't do something. I was too stupid to know that I couldn't. Well, you know what? I did it anyways. And you know what? It passed. That's the crazy thing. I've written another one. I proposed it. And then the shutdown came, which that law was proposed and was set to be proposed. And then COVID came and the restrictions ruined it. So that was a law to unmask Antifa. The masking laws came in, masking regulations. They were never laws. So that tore that down. The minute we're allowed to say you don't need to wear masks, currently on public transit systems, you still have to wear masks. God knows why. It's unscientific. But finding a way to stand up and fight, that's what you have to do. We're at that point. It doesn't matter where you are. Right now, I will say this. I don't think you can be a Democrat and be a believer in Jesus. I firmly don't believe that, because right now, the Democrats are pushing for not only abortion, but they have pushed laws to allow people to kill babies after they're born. And that just is pure evil. I don't think you can be a lover of Jesus and have that desire to kill babies. I don't think that's possible. And if that's becoming part of their platform, I mean, the abortion has been part of the platform. I have my friend's brother, who was Democrat, ran on a Democrat platform and says, I can't help you. He's changing his party. And he is fighting the good fight from a Republican stand. Yet he still hasn't changed his party yet. But it's interesting because he really does not believe. If you listen to this young man, he's in his 30s and he is fighting, I would say, fighting the good fight against corruption in the city of Rochester. And I'm really impressed. If you want to see some interesting politicians, you can go from New York State, from my area. You can go to the channel and I have several politicians that are running a little that they did to a local club here, a conservative club that I'm part of. That's the other thing. Get involved in local people who have a like mind. You'll be surprised. There are groups all over the place. Darcy, do you have something to say?
No, I did, but I forgot.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm just of the opinion we have to fight, and you can't get up. And fighting today means sharing. Don't let people shut you up. You have to look at it as two things. One, you're sharing. If you're influencing an adult, you might be influencing more. The hope is that we can only save this country by continually fighting for it. And that's by standing up. I wish I could tell you more of what to do. I say get involved with the elections. That's the biggest thing. I'm going to share a video for a book, and I'm going to close out the show. I normally have more on news, and just I'll be honest, I've been really exhausted coming home. Been working subbing as a teacher, and I never thought about how tiring it could be.
Yeah. My last words are, one day at a time is all we can do.
Yes. Take that fight. If you're out there, you're a pastor, you're a preacher, you talk about people learning about who Jesus is. Again, if you have a good amount of your flock that claims to be Democrats and they're for killing a baby, and they're in your flock, they're claiming to be Democrats, you got a lot of work ahead of you to get them to know what's true. And if you're out there claiming to be a preacher and you're of the Democratic Party and you're claiming that you're going to support this, find another job. God bless you all. I'm going to play this video in just a second, if I can find it. And I'm just going to close out because I am exhausted. It's been a long, long day. I've been up since 5. So God bless you all. Thank you.
Okay, God bless. Good
Thank
night.
you, Paul.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I love you even more now for having Claire on. I've been talking to her now in Facebook. So
yeah,
she's awesome. She's beautiful. She's bright. Wow. What a soul in Christ.
She has some good friends, and I have selfishly enjoyed meeting her because there's people she's introduced me to as well. When you get the chance to meet her in person, don't don't lose that opportunity, because she's just as real in person. And you can feel her conviction on something. I mean, that's where I think in person is invaluable.
Sure.
She'll let you know how she never has a problem with letting you know what she thinks. And that's, again, I think that's drastically important. As simple as I had always thought, this third question I asked, I had always thought from the way they always portrayed things, and I could never grasp it in Egypt. was all about this attack on a police station. I kept reading more and more about this attack on a police station. And Clare simplifies it by saying this is really about the economy. I mean, as much as you look at it, I mean, I looked at how things happened when Morsi took over and when the Muslim Brotherhood was doing things. I had more details then, and now I have, I mean, it's because I had connections, and now I don't have those. Thank you, LinkedIn. But yes, life is what it is. We have to fight on. That's the best we can do. God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.